Welcome back to the deep dive. I want you to do something for me, just for a second. I want you to go back to high school.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I know. You're sitting in that stuffy classroom. There's that, that hum from the fluorescent lights or an old projector. And a teacher is up at the front, chalk dust on their hands, drawing symbols on a board.
An X and a Y.
An X and a Y. And you're just staring at them and you have this one just overwhelming feeling. And that feeling is, why?
The universal cry of the algebra student. When am I ever going to use this?
Exactly. It just felt like this abstract game we were all being forced to play. A set of, I don't know, mental hoops to jump through for a grade.
A kind of intellectual hazing ritual.
Right. But today, we are going to completely flip that script on its head. We're not going back to that classroom to solve for X. We're diving into a premise that is, honestly, it's a little unnerving.
It is.
The core idea we're exploring is that algebra isn't just a subject you pass or fail. It is the operating system of the rational world.
That's it, exactly. That's the thesis. The idea that is you could just, peel back the messy, chaotic, emotional layer of human life, what's left underneath is a kind of rigid mathematical machinery.
A machine that's just grinding away.
Grinding away, making decisions for us, whether we are conscious of the equations or not. Physics doesn't care if you fail calculus. Gravity still works.
And we are not talking about, figuring out the 20% tip at a restaurant.
No, far from it.
We're talking about the operating system, and this is from the source material, determines who lives and who dies in a hospital triage situation.
It determines whether a passenger jet lands safely or skids off the runway into a fireball.
It even determines whether you're slowly going bankrupt year after year, even though you think you're making smart financial decisions.
It's about truth. With a capital T, in a world that's just drowning in opinions and spin and marketing and feelings, algebra is this cold, hard mechanism for figuring out what is objectively true.
In a universe that has hard physical constraints.
Right. You can't debate the speed of light. You can't negotiate with a coefficient. It just is.
So before we get into the really high-stakes scenarios, and believe me, we are going there, we have to establish the ground rules, the basic code this operating system runs on.
The source calls them the axioms of equality, which I know sounds incredibly philosophical for a math discussion.
It really does. It sounds like a philosophy class.
But it is philosophical.
Yeah.
Before you can even start to do math, you have to have a solid definition of what the word is even means. What does equals mean? It all starts with the concept of balance.
Okay, so what's the first rule? The first axiom?
The first one is the reflexive property. It simply states that A equals A.
A thing is itself.
A thing is itself. A cat is a cat. 5 is 5.
That sounds tautological. It's so obvious. Why do we even need to state it as a rule?
Because in the messy human world, we violate it constantly. We say one thing, but we mean another. We act as if a financial loss is actually a learning opportunity, which is fine, but it's still a loss. Math demands that we start with a clear, unambiguous identity. A is A, full stop.
Okay, that makes sense. You need a stable starting point. What's next?
Next is the symmetric property. If A equals B, then B must equal A. If the weight of this apple is equal to 150 grams, then 150 grams is equal to the weight of this apple. The relationship works both ways.
Again, seems straightforward.
It is. But the real powerhouse, the one that becomes the engine for all logical thought, is the transitive property.
This is the one I remember. If A equals B and B equals C...
then A must equal C.
Right.
It sounds so simple, but think about what it lets you do. It's the foundation of all deduction. It's the reason we don't have to reinvent the wheel every single day.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, let's say I can prove, chemically, that a new treatment I've developed, we'll call it treatment A, is chemically identical to an existing generic drug, drug B.
Okay, so A equals B.
And we have decades of research showing that drug B has been proven to cure a specific disease, disease C.
So B equals C.
Then, because of the transitive property, I can state with absolute certainty that my new treatment A will also cure a disease C. A equals C, I don't need to run a whole new 20-year clinical trial on A. The logic holds. I can bridge the gap.
But humans, we don't always think like that, do we? Our emotions get in the way.
We don't. The best example is the game rock, paper, scissors.
Aha.
Okay, think about it. Rock beats scissors. Scissors beats paper. If our world was transitive, what should happen next?
Rock should beat paper.
But it doesn't. Paper covers rock. It's a non-transitive cycle. It's chaotic. There's no hierarchy of truth. Algebra is the discipline of breaking those illogical cycles and finding the straight, logical line of truth.
That's a really good distinction. So all the standard identities we had to memorize in school, like the difference of squares, they weren't just torture
No,
devices.
not at all. Think of the formula for the difference of squares. A squared minus B squared equals AB times A plus B.
I can still hear my teacher drilling that into us.
Right, but don't see it as a formula to memorize. See it as a tool for deconstruction. It's a statement that says, here is a complex, rigid structure, this difference of two squared things. I can break it apart. I can factor it into two simpler interacting components. It's a tool for factoring reality into pieces you can actually manage.
So the mission for this deep dive is to stop seeing these as, I don't know, squiggles on a page and start seeing them as real decision-making tools.
Exactly.
And we're going to start with what the research calls the science of constraints. Let's jump right into linear algebra.
Linear algebra, the math of straight lines, flat planes, and direct proportionality.
When I hear linear algebra, my brain immediately goes to like matrices and just confusion. But in the real world, this is really the math of resource allocation.
It's the math of you can't have it all.
And the first scenario we're tackling here is, well, it's terrifying. It's the pandemic triage protocol.
This is not a theoretical exercise. This is a scenario that played out in hospitals all over the world not too long ago. It's the ultimate, and I mean the ultimate, linear programming problem.
So set the stage for us. We're not in a classroom anymore. We're in a hospital command center.
That's right. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, the lights are humming, you are the hospital administrator, and you are sweating because the emergency room is overflowing. And here are your constraints.
Hard facts.
The hard facts. You have exactly 50 ventilators. Not 51, 50. You have exactly 200 ICU beds. That is your reality. You can't wish for more. You can't talk your way into having more. The constraints are hard and fixed.
And the patients. They're the variables coming into this system.
They are. And for this model, they come in 3 types. Type A are the severe cases. They need 1 ventilator and 1 ICU bed to have a chance at survival.
Okay, 1-to-1.
Type B are the moderate cases. They're sick, but they don't need a ventilator. They just need 1 ICU bed. And then there's Type C, the critical patients. These are the toughest, most complex cases. To have even a small chance of survival, they need 2 ventilators and 2 ICU beds.
Okay. So my human instinct, my empathy, it immediately looks at Type C.
Of course.
They're the sickest. They're the ones who are most likely to die without our help. I feel this powerful urge to prioritize them. We have to do everything we can for the worst off.
And that is the correct, compassionate human response. But you are not just a compassionate human right now. You are running an objective function. And the only goal of this grim equation is this: maximize Z, where Z is the total number of lives saved.
So we have to turn this gut feeling into math.
We have to. So you take these constraints, the 50 vents, the 200 beds, and you plot them on a graph. You draw lines representing the absolute limits.
So one line for ventilators, another for beds.
Right. And these lines cross, and they block off a section of the graph. They create a shape, usually a polygon in the middle. This shape is called the feasible region.
Meaning, any point inside that shape is a possible combination of patients we can treat without running out of stuff.
Precisely. You can pick any point in there. But we don't want just any solution. We want the optimal solution, the one that saves the most people.
And here's where it gets dark. The material calls this the ethical guillotine.
It is. Because in linear programming, a fundamental theorem states that the optimal solution, the mathematical maximum for your objective, is always located at one of the corner points of that feasible region.
Never in the middle, never a balanced approach.
Never. The math forces you to an extreme. You have to go to a corner.
And when we run the numbers for this specific scenario, with the cost of the Type C patient being so high, what corner does the math push us to?
The math is unforgiving. Because the Type C patient consumes 2 ventilators and 2 beds, the resource cost of treating just one of them is equal to the cost of treating 2 Type A patients.
So it's a 1-for-2 trade.
It's a 1-for-2 trade. The slope of the line, the rate of substitution, dictates the answer.
Right.
The answer is
What's the answer?
0.
Oh, 0. I'm sorry, what you treat 0 critical patients.
Mathematically, yes. The optimal solution to the problem maximize lives saved is to allocate 0 resources to the Type C patients.
That feels monstrous. I mean, you're looking a family in the eye and saying, we have ventilators sitting right there, but we will not give one to your father.
It feels monstrous. It feels like a violation of everything we believe. But look at the alternative from the perspective of the operating system. If you give that father the 2 ventilators, he needs to have a chance.
Yes.
You are simultaneously and with mathematical certainty, guaranteeing that two type A patients who only needed one vent each will die. You are actively trading 2 lives for a chance at saving one.
The inequality 2 is greater than 1 is it's undeniable.
It's undeniable. The algebra forces you to suppress your empathy for the individual you see in front of you in order to save the abstract aggregate. It's an absolutely brutal form of discipline.
So the administrator isn't making a medical guess. They aren't even really making a choice. They are enforcing a linear inequality. The cost is greater than the benefit.
Precisely. And this cold logic, it applies everywhere there are constraints. Let's take another classic example from operations research. They call it the refugee diet problem.
This one is about feeding, 10,000 people in a camp, but on an incredibly tight budget.
Exactly. You have a fixed budget and you have nutritional constraints. Every person must receive a minimum number of calories, a minimum amount of protein, and a minimum amount of fat per day to stay alive.
And you have a list of available foods: rice, beans, vegetable oil, maybe some canned meat or vegetables.
And your objective function this time is minimize cost, which we'll call Z, while still meeting all the nutritional constraints.
Okay, so if I'm running that camp, my instinct is to provide some variety. It seems humane. I'd want to give them some meat, some vegetables. It's good for morale.
But morale is not a variable in this specific equation. The equation is survival within budget. And if you solve this problem using a tool called the simplex method, which is essentially an algorithm that walks along the edges of that feasible region shape from one corner to the next, it will inevitably drive you to an extreme corner.
And what's at that corner? What does the optimal diet look like?
The math will likely spit out an answer like,
Yeah.
The optimal diet is 1.4 cups of rice, 0.8 cups of beans, and 3 tablespoons of oil, period.
That's it. No meat, no vegetables at all.
If the meat costs 5 times what the beans cost for the same amount of protein, the math cuts it out entirely. The line is just absolutely brutal. The source material calls variety a luxury variable. It's something you can't afford.
So what happens if I ignore the math and add the meat anyway for morale?
Let's say adding meat raises the daily cost per person by just 10 cents. Doesn't sound like much, right?
Yeah.
But you have 10,000 people. That's an extra $1,000 a day. Over a 30-day month, that's $30,000. If your budget was fixed, you've just created a shortfall. You run out of money completely on day 27. And for the last 3 days of the month, nobody eats anything at all.
So the boring but mathematically optimal diet is actually the only ethical choice, because the alternative is starvation.
That is the discipline of linear algebra. It tells you that in survival situations, trying to be balanced or nice can be catastrophic. Efficiency isn't about saving a few pennies. It's about making sure the equation actually closes at the end of the month.
That is a stark, stark way to look at the world. But life isn't always linear, is it? Sometimes things aren't these perfect equations. Sometimes they're inequalities where being close just isn't good enough.
Exactly. An equation is a statement of balance. A equals B. But reality is almost always an inequality. You have at least this much fuel. You have less than this much time. And nowhere is that more physically immediate and unforgiving than in our next segment. Survival in physics.
We're talking about the algebra of staying alive. And the first decision is the runway length problem. This is kinematic algebra.
So I want you to imagine you are a pilot. You're flying a heavy jet fully loaded with passengers and fuel. You're on final approach, coming in for a landing.
Okay, I'm in the cockpit. I see the runway lights.
You are moving at 70 meters per second. Now, that might not sound like much, but that's about 157 miles per hour. It's fast.
Very fast.
And you know your aircraft. You know that your brakes, your spoilers, your reverse thrusters all combined can generate a maximum deceleration of -3 meters per second squared. That is a physical constant. It's a limit based on friction between rubber and tarmac on the aerodynamics of your plane. You cannot magically brake harder.
And I look out the window and I see the runway. The controller said it's a short one. It's only 800 meters long.
So here's the question. It's a binary choice. Do you land or do you abort?
My gut, my experience as a pilot says it's 800 meters. That's almost a kilometer. That's huge. I can make it work. I'm a good pilot. I'll just brake hard.
But the algebra doesn't care if you're an ace pilot from a movie. It only cares about the numbers. We use one of the core kinematic formulas. V squared equals U squared plus 2AD.
Okay, break that down for us.
V is our desired final velocity, which is 0. We want to stop. U is our initial velocity, which is 70 meters per second. A is our acceleration, or in this case, deceleration, which is -3. And D is the distance, the very thing we need to solve for.
So we plug in the numbers.
We plug them in. 0 squared is 0. So 0 equals 70 squared plus 2 times negative 3 times d.
70 squared is 4,900.
Right, so 0 equals 4,900 minus 6 pence. We move the 6b to the other side. 6b equals 4,900. Now we just divide 4,900 by 6.
Which gives you something over 800?
It gives you 816.6 meters.
Roughly.
816.6 meters.
Right.
And the runway is 800 meters.
You are 16.6 meters short.
That's nothing. That's like half a basketball court. Surely I can just stomp on the brakes a little harder or maybe touch down a little earlier on the runway. And that is exactly how people die. That 816.6 meters is the absolute theoretical minimum required stopping distance under perfect conditions. It assumes you touch down on the very first inch of pavement and apply maximum braking perfectly and instantly. In reality, you weren't.
But even if I did everything perfectly.
Even then, the inequality is 800 is strictly less than 816.6.
Okay.
This is what's called a strict inequality. There is no gray area.
So physics is telling me, in no uncertain terms, if you allow those wheels to touch this runway, you will go off the end of it.
You go off the end at roughly 30 miles per hour. You will crash. There is no negotiating. There's no trying harder. The only valid decision, the only rational choice provided by the operating system is to abort, power up, go around, divert to another airport.
It's just so interesting because in most of life, we feel like we can give 110%, we can make it fit, but algebra says, no, the constraints are real and you will obey them.
Physics is the ultimate non-negotiable arbiter. And that brings us to another concept from aviation that applies to literally anyone trying to get something done, vectors.
Vectors. I remember the arrows from school. It's not just how much, but also which way.
Exactly. You have to distinguish between scalar effort and vector effort. A scalar is just a quantity. Like, I worked 12 hours today. It's a number.
Okay.
A vector is a quantity plus a direction. I worked 12 hours moving the project forward. The direction is critical.
So the scenario here to illustrate this is the flight navigation problem, the crosswind.
Right. You are a pilot. Your mission is to fly due north. Your engines are pushing the plane forward through the air at 200 kilometers per hour. That's your scalar effort.
But there's a problem. There's a wind, a strong crosswind blowing from the west directly at your side at 50 kilometers per hour.
Right. So, question. If you just point the nose of your airplane north and fly, what happens?
The wind is going to push me sideways. I'll end up to the east of my destination.
You will. You'll fly a diagonal line. You'll end up northeast of where you wanted to go. You miss your target completely.
So to actually travel along the ground in a northerly direction, I have to compensate. I have to turn the plane. I have to point the nose northwest into the wind.
You have to crab into the wind, as they call it. But here's the penalty. And this is the part that people forget in their own lives.
Yeah.
You are now using some of your 200 kilometers per hour of engine thrust just to fight that 50 kilometer per hour sideways wind.
I'm not using all my energy to go forward anymore.
A portion of your effort is now dedicated solely to canceling out the crosswind. The vector of your effort is no longer aligned with the vector of your desired outcome.
And this is where we have to use some trigonometry, right? A little Pythagorean theorem.
It's a simple right-angle triangle.
Mm-hmm.
The hypotenuse is your total engine thrust, 200. One of the sides is the wind you have to cancel out, 50. The other side is your actual effective speed in the direction you want to go, your ground speed.
And that's going to be the square root of 200 squared minus 50 squared.
Which, if you run the numbers, comes out to about 193.6 kilometers per hour. Let's call it 194.
So I've lost 6 kilometers of speed.
You've lost 6 kilometers of effective progress. This is the headwind penalty, or in this case, the crosswind penalty.
6 kilometers per hour doesn't sound like a catastrophe.
Over a 1-hour flight, it's not. But over a 5-hour flight, that's an extra 30 kilometers you have to travel effectively. If you calculated your fuel needs based on your engine speed of 200, but your ground speed is only 194.
You're going to run out of gas before you get there.
You'll run out of fuel 30 kilometers short of the airport. The hard call is to recognize that the flight, as planned, is impossible. The math demands you divert to a closer, alternate airport.
So the effort was there. The engines were running at 100% the whole time. But the vector alignment, or lack thereof, reduced the actual outcome.
The source has a great line for this. It says, effort without alignment is zero work. In physics, the definition of work is force times distance, but specifically, only the component of the force in the direction of the displacement.
If you push on a wall as hard as you can, the wall doesn't move, so you've done zero work.
You've done zero work. You're exhausted, but the outcome is zero. It's a life lesson wrapped in trigonometry. Stop just pushing harder. Check your vector. Make sure you're pointed in the right direction.
Okay, that's powerful. Let's move on. We're getting into segment 3, We're leaving the world of straight lines behind. We are getting into curves, optimization, and gravity.
This is where we move from linear equations to quadratics. The world isn't flat, it's curved. And reality is often defined by the parabola, the x-squared term,
The U-shape.
the U-shape. In business, in biology, in almost any complex system, things don't just go up forever in a straight line. Returns go up, they reach a peak, and then they start coming down.
The law of diminishing returns.
Exactly. And the shape of that law is a parabola.
So let's apply this to a business decision. The scenario is the break-even pivot. Let's say we're launching a new product, I don't know, a high-tech smart coffee maker.
Okay. And the first big decision you have to make is what price to set.
Right. Basic economics tells us there's a demand curve. If we set the price really low, we'll sell a lot of them. If we set the price really high, we'll sell very few.
Let's model that with an equation. Let's say the quantity you sell, Q, is equal to 100,000 minus 5 times the price, P. So Q equals 1,005P.
So every dollar we raise the price, we sell 5 fewer units.
Exactly. And our goal as a business is to maximize profit. And profit is simply revenue minus cost. And revenue, of course, is the price you charge times the quantity you sell.
So profit equals P times Q minus cost.
Right. And since Q itself is a function of P,
Right.
when you substitute that demand equation in, you get P times 5P. And what happens when you multiply that P through the parentheses?
You get a negative 5P squared term.
You get a squared term. And the negative sign in front of it means your profit function is a downward opening parabola. It's a hill.
A hill. Okay, I can picture that.
When the price is zero, you have no revenue, you just have costs, so your profit is negative. As you raise the price, you start climbing the hill, your profit grows. But if you raise the price too much, your sales drop to zero, and you fall down the other side of the hill.
So the goal of the manager is to find the exact peak of that hill, the vertex of the parabola.
Precisely. And you don't have to guess. Algebra gives you a simple formula for it. The x-coordinate of the vertex is decided to be 2a. You plug in the numbers from your profit equation, and it will tell you the exact price that gives you the absolute maximum profit possible.
So in our example, let's say the math says the optimal price is $125.
Okay, $125. That's the top of the hill.
Great. We set the price at $125. We pop the champagne. We're going to be rich.
Not so fast. This is where the algebraic kill signal comes in.
A kill signal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Suppose you do the calculation. You find the vertex, the price that gives you the maximum possible profit. But then you plug that price back into the profit equation to see what that profit actually is.
Okay.
And the value is negative $50,000.
Wait, so the absolute best we can possibly do is still lose 50 grand?
Yes. Imagine the entire hill is underwater. The peak is the highest point, but it's still 50 feet below the surface. This happens when your fixed costs, your research and development, setting up the factory, marketing, are just too high relative to what the market is willing to pay.
So even if we play the game perfectly, if we optimize every single variable, we are mathematically guaranteed to lose money.
That is what the discriminant of the quadratic equation tells you. If it's negative, it means there are no real roofs. There is no real price at which your profit is zero. The curve never crosses the x-axis.
So the hard decision here isn't, let's try to lower the cost a little, or let's market harder.
The truly hard, rational decision is kill the project. The math is screaming at you that the business model is fundamentally non-viable. There is no combination of variables within this model that results in a positive outcome. You have to walk away.
That's heartbreaking for a founder who believes in their product. But it's such a great coffee maker.
The market doesn't care. The parabola is underwater.
Let's talk about a different kind of curve. The hyperbola. The source calls this the algebra of trade-offs.
This is the curve defined by the equation y equals kx. It's the ultimate seesaw. If one variable, x, goes up, the other variable, y, must go down to keep the product constant.
You know the old project management saying, fast, good, or cheap. Pick any two.
That is a perfect real-world description of a hyperbolic relationship. You live on that curve, you can move along it, trading one for the other, but you can't magically have all three. You can't be at the origin.
So the scenario in the material is about a hiring strategy. This one really hit home for me because I have seen managers make this exact mistake 1,000 times.
It's a common one. You have a fixed budget, and you need to hire developers. You can trade off between experience, let's call that E, and the number of people you hire, N.
The equation is basically experience times number equals a constant budget.
Exactly. So your options are, say, hire one very senior developer with a high E value and a low N value. Or for the same money, hire 10 junior developers with a low E value and a high N value.
And managers, especially non-technical ones, they love the 10 juniors option. Look at my team. Look at all those bodies and seats. We'll get so much work done. 10 people typing is obviously faster than one person typing.
But that assumes a linear relationship. It assumes that 10 people equals 10 times the output.
Yeah.
In complex, creative tasks like software engineering, the relationship is not linear. It's hyperbolic and it's asymptotic.
Okay, explain the asymptote here. What does that mean in this context?
An asymptote is a line that a curve approaches but never touches. In this case, there's a threshold of competence. For any sufficiently complex task, there's a minimum level of skill required to even begin to solve it effectively.
And a junior developer might be below that threshold.
They might be. And if they are, they don't just produce less value than a senior, they might actually produce negative value.
Negative. How is that possible?
By creating bugs that a senior then has to spend time fixing. By constantly asking questions that interrupt and distract the few senior people you have. By building code that is so flawed, it has to be completely thrown away and rewritten later. This is the mythical man-month concept in software.
Adding more people to a late project makes it later.
Because on that hyperbola, the 10 juniors fall into the inefficiency zone. They're way out on the quantity axis, but their corresponding productivity value is nearly zero or even negative because of the overhead they create.
So mathematically, one senior developer who is above that competence threshold is worth more than 10 or even infinite juniors who are below it.
For that specific complex task, yes. You cannot sum up incompetence to create competence. The math doesn't average out that way. The hyperbola warns us. In knowledge work, do not trade quality for quantity below the competence threshold. You will just burn cash faster for a worse result.
All right, let's brace ourselves for segment 4. This is where our brains, our linear thinking monkey brains, really start to break. We're talking about the truth of time and growth, logarithms and exponentials.
This is probably the hardest section for humans to grasp intuitively. We evolved on the savannah to think linearly. 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines, a very simple arithmetic progression.
We did not evolve to understand one virus, which becomes 10, which becomes 100, then 1,000, then 1,000,000.
Exactly. Our brains just aren't wired for exponential growth and decay. And the mathematical tool that allows us to bridge that gap, to make sense of these vast scales, is the logarithm.
A logarithm is just a way of counting the number of zeros, right?
That's a great way to think about it. It's a question. How many times do I have to multiply a certain base number by itself to get this other much larger number? It compresses these huge unmanageable scales into simple linear steps.
And the scenario here is, once again, life or death. It's medical pharmacokinetics, specifically anesthesia.
This is a terrifying application of this math. Imagine you are the anesthesiologist in an operating room. Your entire job is to keep the patient suspended in what's called the therapeutic window.
The sweet spot.
The sweet spot. For this particular drug, let's say that below 2 milligrams per liter of concentration in the blood, the patient starts to wake up on the operating table. They can feel everything. It's a source of immense trauma.
Horrifying.
And above 6 milligrams per liter, the drug causes respiratory arrest. The breathing stops. They die.
So you have a window of only 4 units. That is it.
That's it. And the huge problem is the drug doesn't leave the body in a nice, predictable straight line. It decays exponentially based on its half-life. The formula involves Euler's number, E, that magical 2.718. The concentration over time is C0 times E to the power of negative KT.
So you inject the drug, the level in the blood spikes up to, say, 5. Then it immediately starts to decay, swooping down in a curve. It drops fast at first. Then the rate of decay slows down over time.
Right. Now imagine the surgery is taking longer than expected. It's been an hour. You can see on your monitor that the drug level is dropping. You need to top them up with another dose.
So my linear thinking brain says, okay, half the time has passed, so the level's probably halfway down. I'll give half the original dose to bring it back up.
And if you do that, you will kill the patient.
Why?
Because of the accumulation equation. There's still a significant amount of the original drug in their system. The new dose doesn't start from 0. It adds on top of the tail end of the old dose. If you don't use the precise logarithmic decay function to calculate exactly how much is left, your new spike will shoot way past the 6 mg ceiling.
So your intuition is not just wrong, it's actually lethally dangerous here.
Intuition is your worst enemy in exponential environments. You need the log function to tell you where the curve actually is, not where your linear brain guesses it is. And we see this same intuitive failure in personal finance all the time.
Let's talk about the money. The classic pay down the mortgage versus invest in the market debate. This is a huge topic online. People argue about it constantly.
Constantly.
So here's the setup. I have $50,000 in cash. sitting in my bank account. I also have a $50,000 mortgage debt at a 6% interest rate. But I know that the stock market, on average, returns 7% per year.
And the common advice you'll get from almost everyone is, don't pay off the debt. That's dumb money. Invest the $50 in the stock market. 7% is greater than 6%. You're making a 1% profit spread. It's free money.
It sounds so logical. It's a simple linear comparison. 7 minus 6 equals a positive 1.
But it completely ignores what the source material calls the algebraic reality of variance. The debt, that 6% mortgage, is a fixed, deterministic, negative compound rate. That negative 6% happens every year no matter what. It is a risk-free loss.
Okay. But the market return is 7%.
That's 7%. That is a geometric mean. It's a long-term average of a volatile, chaotic system that goes up and down wildly.
So let's run the numbers. Let's simulate what they call the sequence of returns risk. I decide to be clever, and I invest the $50,000. And in year one, the market crashes. It goes down 20%.
Okay. Your $50,000 investment is now worth only $40,000. Meanwhile, your $50,000 debt, which you didn't pay, still cost you 6% interest. You are definitely down, big time.
But then, in year two, the market has a huge rally. It goes up 20%. The news channels are all saying, the market is back to where it started.
But here is the math trap. A 20% gain on your now depleted base of $40,000 is only an $8,000 gain.
So my investment is now at $48,000.
You lost 20%, you gained 20%, and you are still down $2,000 from where you started. That's not even counting the 2 years of mortgage interest you paid.
Wow, that's sneaky.
Mm-hmm.
A 20% loss and a 20% gain do not cancel each other out.
Not even close. Percentages on a shrinking base don't recover as fast. This is known as volatility drag. Meanwhile, that debt cost you a solid, unshakable 6% every single year. The person who just paid off the debt is sitting at zero, neutral. The smart investor is thousands of dollars poorer.
So the algebra dictates that paying the debt is superior because you are eliminating a guaranteed negative compounder from your life.
Yes, you are trading a gamble for a sure thing. The return you get from paying off a 6% debt is a guaranteed, risk-free, tax-free 6% return. Mathematically, unless the spread between expected returns and the debt is massive, the guaranteed return of paying off debt is almost always the superior risk-adjusted choice.
Guaranteed return trumps the gamble. I feel like I need to go reevaluate my entire portfolio right now.
Most people do when they see the raw math of variance.
Let's move to segment 5. More about money. Money, value, and causality. This is about financial algebra. We talked about interest, but let's talk about the fundamental concept, the time value of money, the present value equation.
The core idea is that money is a function of time. $1 in your hand today is worth more than the promise of $1 a year from now.
Why?
Because you can take that dollar today and invest it. You can start earning interest immediately. So to compare money across time, you have to discount future money back to its present value, or PV.
Let's apply this to a very common situation. The salary negotiation. This is a classic startup trap.
It absolutely is.
You have two offers. Offer A is a $150,000 annual salary. All cash, no equity. Simple. Offer B is a $100,000 annual salary. But you also get 10,000 stock options.
And the recruiter leans in close and they get this glint in their eye and they say, look, we're going to be the next Google. These options, they could be worth $50,000, $100,000, maybe even $500,000 when we IPO in a few years.
And the greedy, optimistic part of my brain just lights up. It does the quick math. $500,000 plus a $100,000 salary is way better than $150,000. I'm taking the options.
But you have to stop and run the expected value calculation. The EV calculation forces you to weight each possible outcome by its actual probability of happening.
So walk us through the algebra on that.
First, let's calculate the definite cost of taking offer B. You are accepting $50,000 less in cash salary per year. Over a typical 4-year vesting period, that is a guaranteed loss of $200,000 in cash. If we discount that future lost cash back to its present value, let's call it a $180,000 investment that you are personally making in this startup.
So I'm not getting free options. I am essentially writing them a check for $180,000 to buy these options.
That is precisely the right way to frame it. Now, what is the expected value of the options you are buying? You have to assign honest probabilities.
Okay. Scenario 1. The unicorn exit. The options are worth $500,000. What's the probability of that?
Let's be generous. Let's say 5%.
Scenario 2. The decent exit. It gets acquired. The options are worth $100,000.
Okay, maybe there's a 20% chance of that.
And scenario 3. The most likely one. The startup fails. The options are worth 0.
And for a typical startup, the probability of that is easily 75%. That's the base rate of failure in the industry.
So now we just multiply the outcomes by their probabilities and add them up.
Let's do it. $500,000 times 5% is $25,000. $100,000 times 20% is $20,000. And 0 times 75% is 0.
So the total expected value is $45,000.
$45,000.
Wait, so I am paying $180,000 in lost wages to buy a lottery ticket that is mathematically worth only $45,000.
That is the trade you are being offered. Unless you have some specific insider information, unless you know for a fact that the probability of success is way, way higher than average, the algebra screams that offer B is a mathematical trap. It's designed to lower the company's cash burn rate at your personal expense. Take the cash.
That is incredibly sobering. I think so many people just see that potential jackpot number and they completely ignore the probability weighting.
That's a cognitive bias called convexity bias. We are suckers for the long-shot jackpot, and we systematically underweight the high probability of getting 0.
Speaking of bad money mistakes, let's talk about the sunk cost fallacy. We all know what it is, this idea of throwing good money after bad. But how does calculus explain why it's a fallacy?
It's the fundamental difference between integration and differentiation.
Okay, calculus class again.
Integration, the integral symbol, is all about summing up the area under a curve. It looks backward. It's about adding up everything you've done in the past.
Differentiation, on the other hand, the derivative, is about finding the slope at a single point. It's about the rate of change right now.
Exactly. So let's say I've spent $10 million on a project and it's failing badly.
My emotional brain is integrating. It's looking backward and saying, look at this huge pile of cash, this integral of $10 million. We can't just walk away from that. We can't waste it.
But the rational operating system says, stop integrating, differentiate. Look at the derivative of the future.
What does that mean?
It means you ask this question. If I spend $1 more on this project right now, what is the expected return on that specific dollar? If the marginal return is less than $1, you stop. Full stop.
And what about the $10 million I already spent?
In calculus, when you take the derivative of a function, any constant term drops to 0. That $10 million is a constant. It has already been spent. It is in the past. It cannot change. So mathematically, the derivative of 10 mils and 1,000 with respect to time is 0.
It just vanishes from the equation.
It vanishes. The math proves that the past is literally irrelevant to the decision of how to maximize your future outcome. The only thing that matters is the slope of the line from this point forward.
That is an incredibly liberating idea. It gives you permission to walk away from anything. The past is 0.
The math demands you walk away.
We are down to our final segment, segment 6. Risk, logic, and the code that runs it all. We're talking probability, error analysis, and Boolean algebra.
The building blocks of rational decision-making.
Let's start with what the material calls the Bayesian trap. This is about medical testing again, but from a purely probabilistic angle.
This is a concept that shows just how badly our intuition fails us when we deal with accuracy in rare events.
So here's the scenario. I decide to take a screening test for a rare disease. The disease only affects 1 in every 1,000 people. It's very rare. The test itself is marketed as being 99% accurate.
Sounds like a great test.
Sounds fantastic. So I take the test, and a week later, the doctor calls with the results. It's positive. My immediate panic thought is, am I sick?
And most people, in that moment of panic, they think, the test is 99% accurate and it's positive. That must mean there's a 99% chance that I'm sick.
That feels intuitively correct.
It feels correct,
Yep.
but it is wildly, dangerously wrong. Bayes' theorem forces us to look at the whole population, not just our single test result. So let's visualize 1,000 people standing in a big room.
Okay, 1,000 people.
Fact number 1. Because the disease rate is 1 in 1,000, only one single person in that room is actually sick. The other 999 are healthy.
Right.
Fact number 2, the test is 99% accurate, which means it has a 1% error rate, specifically a 1% false positive rate.
So now let's test all 1,000 people. What happens?
Well, the one person who was actually sick takes the test and it correctly comes back positive. So that's one true positive result.
Now what about the healthy people?
Now we look at the 999 healthy people. The test is 99% accurate, so it gets most of them right, but it gets 1% of them wrong. It gives them a false positive.
Now what is 1% of 999?
It's 9.99. Let's just round it to 10 people.
So 10 perfectly healthy people get a positive test result.
Yes. So now let's look at the total pool of people who received a positive result. In that pool, you have the one sick person and you have the 10 healthy people. There are 11 people in total holding a positive test.
And I'm one of them.
You're one of them. So what are the odds that you are the one truly sick person and not one of the 10 healthy ones?
It's 1 in 11.
Exactly. And 1 divided by 11 is about 9%.
Wow. So I went from thinking I was 99% doomed to realizing there's a 91% chance that I'm totally fine.
That is the power of Bayesian reasoning. It's the base rate fallacy. Because the disease itself is so rare, the false positives from the large healthy population completely overwhelm the true positives from the tiny sick population.
So the action item is what? Don't start chemo?
Do not start chemo. Do not panic. Demand a second, different kind of test. Bayes' theorem is a mathematical shield against unnecessary medical trauma.
Let's move to error analysis. This is one for the engineers listening. The bridge scenario.
The core idea here is that in the real physical world, no number is ever exact. Your measurement is always x plus or minus some tiny error, delta x. There is always an error bar.
And the problem isn't the tiny error itself, it's what the material calls error stacking.
Explain that. What is error stacking?
Imagine a suspension bridge cable. It's held in place by a massive steel bolt. That bolt goes through a steel plate which is welded to a huge support beam.
A chain of components.
Exactly. Now suppose the bolt was manufactured just 1% smaller than the spec. It's still within the allowable tolerance, and the hole in the plate was drilled 1% larger than the spec, also within tolerance. And the steel in the beam is 1% weaker than average, but still within tolerance.
Individually, none of these are a problem. They all pass inspection.
But algebra tells us that when you combine these variables, the errors propagate. Often they multiply or add up. Suddenly you have a worst-case stack where the bolt is a little too small, the hole is a little too big, the steel is a little too weak, and a gust of wind is a little stronger than average, and the whole thing fails.
The average bridge would have held just fine, but the one at the far tail of the probability distribution, the one where all the errors lined up in the wrong direction, that one collapses.
Exactly. And that is why engineers don't design for the average case. They design for the worst case. This is why we have safety factors.
A safety factor of 2.0, meaning build this thing twice as strong as the math says it needs to be on average.
Right. And it's not because engineers are being wasteful. It's because they're using that buffer to absorb the inevitable, chaotic, algebraic propagation of small errors.
Finally, let's look at the code of logic itself, Boolean algebra, and specifically the logic of the law, and RE versus OR.
We use these words so casually in everyday speech, but in logic, in computer science, in contract law, they are precise, powerful operators. The AND gate and the OR gate, they determine the flow of power in a contract.
Let's look at a founder's agreement for a startup. Or any employment contract, really. There's always a clause about losing your stock if you leave.
And a standard company-friendly clause might read, you forfeit your unvested shares if you are fired for cause or R if you resign.
Notice the logical operator there, or R. In set theory, or R is a union. It combines the two sets. It creates a massive target for the company.
If either of those two conditions is met, you lose your shares. It's very easy for the company to trigger this. If they want you out, they just have to make your life miserable enough that you resign.
So as the employee, as the founder, you have to fight to change the logic gate.
You negotiate to change OR to AND.
Yes, I forfeit my shares only if I am fired for cause AND. The board of directors votes unanimously to confirm it.
Now the conditions have to overlap. It's an intersection of sets, not a union. The target you have to hit to lose your shares is now tiny and very specific.
Precisely. The general rule for programming your own legal operating system is simple. Fight for any clauses on any penalties to make them hard to trigger, and fight for OR clauses on any benefits to make them easy to trigger.
I get my annual bonus if I hit the revenue target or the profit target.
Exactly. You are literally programming the logic of your own financial life.
Wow. We have covered a staggering amount of ground. From the grim geometry of hospital triage to the calculus of sunken costs.
And the amazing thing is, we didn't solve for X on a chalkboard a single time.
No, we really didn't. We used algebra to verify reality. So, to summarize the key takeaways, linear algebra taught us that balanced solutions are often suboptimal, and in constrained systems, the answer is usually at a corner.
Inequalities taught us that physics does not negotiate. Almost isn't good enough.
Quadratics gave us the kill signal, the mathematical proof that a business can be perfectly optimized and still be fundamentally non-viable.
Logarithms warned us to fear exponential decay
Yeah.
and to never, ever trust our linear intuition with our money or our lives.
Financial algebra showed us that paying off debt is a guaranteed risk-free win against the chaos of market variance.
And Boolean algebra taught us to watch our A and Ds and our ORs, because they're the levers of power in any agreement.
It really is an operating system, and if you ignore it, it just runs in the background making decisions for you. But if you learn the code, you can start to navigate the constraints yourself.
You can work with reality instead of fighting it.
So, we always like to leave our listeners with a final challenge, a way to apply this deep dive to their own lives.
Here is the challenge. I want you, right now, to identify one major linear assumption you are currently making in your life.
What do you mean by that?
It's a belief you hold that follows a straight line. For example, if I work twice as hard at my job, I will get twice the results and twice the recognition.
Or if I just spend twice as much time explaining my point of view to my partner, they will understand it twice as well.
Both very common, very linear assumptions. Now, once you've identified yours, I want you to test that assumption against the curves we discussed today.
Is it actually a parabola? Have you maybe already passed the vertex? Is working even harder actually producing negative returns like burnout, stress, and mistakes?
Is it an asymptote? Are you pouring more and more energy into something that will never get past a certain threshold of competence or understanding? Is it a hyperbola, where you're trading away something vital like your health for diminishing gains?
Run the numbers. Check the curve.
Don't just assume the world is a straight line. Do the algebra. Find the truth.
Thank you for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you in the next reality check.